No one spoke Japanese. The mafia boss was furious, until the shy waitress replied perfectly. Just before we begin, your presence means a lot. Say hi and share where you're tuning in from, only if you want to. The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Sakura Prime, Manhattan's most exclusive Japanese restaurant, as Kenji Yamamoto surveyed the private dining room with barely contained fury. His jaw clenched beneath his neatly trimmed stubble, dark eyes scanning the trembling staff lined against the wall. The black blazer stretched across his broad shoulders, his white shirt unbuttoned just enough to reveal the gold chain resting against his collarbone, and the edge of an intricate dragon tattoo that disappeared beneath the fabric. Does anyone here speak Japanese? His accented English was low, dangerous. The kind of voice that made grown men reconsider their life choices. Silence. Pathetic, trembling silence. Kenji's fingers drummed once against the mahogany table. A habit his subordinates had learned meant someone's night was about to get significantly worse. He'd flown 16 hours from Tokyo to handle a situation that required absolute discretion, only to discover the authentic Japanese establishment couldn't provide a single person who spoke his language. The irony would have been amusing if it weren't so infuriating. Useless, he muttered in Japanese, reaching for his phone. His heavy gold ring caught the light as he prepared to call his second-in-command. This entire meeting would need to be relocated, delayed. Complications he couldn't afford when the Kojima family was already questioning his authority. Moshiwake gozaimasen. The soft voice cut through his anger like a blade through silk. Kenji's head snapped up. Standing in the doorway, partially hidden by the ornate screen, was a young woman in a red apron over a simple black shirt. Her light brown hair was pulled into a neat ponytail, a few wisps framing a face that was more interesting than conventionally pretty, delicate features, clear blue eyes that held intelligence and something else he couldn't quite name. She looked terrified, her hands clasped in front of her apron, but she held his gaze with a dignity that most of his own men lacked. "You speak Japanese?" It wasn't a question. Kenji leaned back in his chair, reassessing. The restaurant manager was making frantic gestures behind her, clearly trying to signal her to leave, but she stood her ground. "Hi." She bowed slightly, the gesture perfect in its execution. Not too deep, not too shallow. Someone had taught her well. "I apologize for the inconvenience, Yamamoto-sama. If you'll allow me, I would be honored to assist with anything you require." The formal Japanese rolled off her tongue with an ease that startled him. Her accent was American, yes, but her grammar was flawless, her word choice appropriate for addressing someone of his status. Kenji found himself studying her more carefully. The way she kept her posture respectful but not cowering, the intelligence in those clear eyes, the subtle tremor in her hands that betrayed her fear even as she offered help. "Interesting. Your name?" He switched to Japanese entirely, watching to see if she could follow. "Emma Clark." She answered in Japanese without hesitation. "I've been working here for 6 months, Yamamoto-sama." "Where did you learn to speak like that?" Kenji gestured to the chair across from him. The restaurant manager looked like he might faint, but Kenji ignored him. If this American waitress could solve his immediate problem, he'd use her. "Sit." Emma hesitated for only a moment before moving forward. She sat with the same careful grace she'd displayed in her bow, her hands folded in her lap. "I studied in Tokyo for 2 years, at Waseda University." "Studying what?" He poured himself sake from the bottle on the table, noting how her eyes followed the movement. She was nervous. Good, she should be. His reputation preceded him, even here in New York, even among those who didn't know his face. Japanese literature and culture. Emma's voice remained steady despite the fear he could see flickering in her eyes. "I worked part-time at a traditional ryokan in Kyoto to improve my language skills." Kenji felt something shift in his chest, an unwelcome sensation he couldn't quite identify. This American girl with her red apron and nervous hands had spent time in his country, had loved it enough to dedicate years to understanding it. It had been 6 months since he'd been back to Tokyo, 6 months of handling the Yamamoto family's American operations, while his world became increasingly complicated by rivals who saw his time abroad as weakness. The manager doesn't know you speak Japanese. Another observation, another test. He watched her face carefully, looking for signs of deception. No one knows. Emma met his eyes, and he saw something flicker there. Sadness, perhaps, or regret. There's never been a reason to mention it. Until tonight. Lucky for me. Kenji allowed himself a small smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. Unlucky for you, perhaps. I have business to discuss here. Business that requires absolute discretion. You understand discretion, Emma Clark? She swallowed hard, her gaze briefly dropping to his hands, to the expensive watch, the heavy ring, the faint scarring on his knuckles that spoke of violence barely contained. When she looked back up, he saw the moment she truly understood what she'd walked into. Her face paled slightly, but she didn't run. I understand, Yamamoto-sama. Good. He leaned forward, close enough to see the flecks of gray in her blue eyes, close enough to smell the faint scent of cherry blossoms from her perfume. Or perhaps it was just his imagination, seeing ghosts of home in this American girl. Because the conversation I'm about to have cannot leave this room, if it does. He let the sentence hang, unfinished but clear in its implication. Emma's chin lifted slightly, a flash of defiance breaking through the fear. I'm a waitress, not a spy. Your secrets are safe with me. Before Kenji could respond, the private room door slid open. 3 men entered. 2 were his own guards, their hands never far from their weapons beneath their perfectly tailored suits. The third was Tanaka, his second in command, whose scarred face twisted into a frown when he saw Emma. Yamamoto-sama, this is highly irregular. Tanaka began in Japanese. She translates, Kenji cut him off, his tone brooking no argument. The Americans I'm meeting don't speak Japanese. She ensures nothing is lost in translation. You have a problem with that? Tanaka's jaw tightened, but he bowed his head. No, Yamamoto-sama. As Kenji began outlining his requirements for the evening, translations, subtle observations, absolute silence about what she'd witness, he found his attention continually drawn back to Emma. She listened with complete focus, asking intelligent questions when necessary, her fear gradually giving way to professional composure. He noticed the way she tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear when concentrating, the slight furrow between her brows when parsing complex terminology, the unconscious grace in her movements. This American waitress with her red apron and perfect Japanese was about to become very useful to him. And that small, unwelcome feeling in his chest, the one that had stirred when she'd spoken his language with such care, he would bury it where it belonged. He was Kenji Yamamoto, Oyabun of the Yamamoto Gumi family. He didn't have room in his life for feelings, especially not for a woman who represented everything his world had stolen from him. Innocence, normalcy, peace. But as the evening's meetings began and Emma settled into her role with surprising competence, Kenji found himself wondering what other surprises this American girl might hold, and whether those surprises would prove to be his salvation or his destruction. The night was just beginning. Emma's hands trembled as she poured green tea for the 5th time that evening, her mind racing to keep up with the rapid-fire Japanese flowing between Kenji Yamamoto and his associates. The private room had become a pressure cooker of tension, testosterone, and barely veiled threats disguised as business discussion. She'd translated talks about territory agreements and family protocols, phrases that sounded innocent until you noticed the cold calculation in these men's eyes. She wasn't naive. Halfway through the first meeting, when a scar-faced man named Tanaka had casually mentioned how problems tend to disappear when the Yamamoto family addressed them, Emma had understood exactly what kind of business she was translating for. The realization should have sent her running. Instead, she'd taken a deep breath, straightened her red apron, and continued her work with professional precision. Now, at 2 a.m, the meetings had finally concluded. The other men had filtered out, leaving only Kenji at the table, nursing a glass of whiskey and studying her with those dark, unreadable eyes. Emma stood by the wall, exhausted but maintaining her composure, unsure if she was dismissed or expected to remain. "Sit." Kenji gestured to the chair across from him, the same command he'd given hours ago. But now his voice held less ice, more curiosity. "You did well tonight." Emma sat, acutely aware of how the restaurant had fallen silent around them. The staff had left an hour ago, likely encouraged by Kenji's guards. They were alone, or as alone as one could be with 2 armed men stationed outside the door. "Thank you, Yamamoto-sama." She kept her response formal, safe. "Drop the sama." He switched to English, his accent more pronounced when tired. "We're alone, just Kenji." The informality felt dangerous somehow, like he was removing a barrier she desperately needed. Emma's fingers twisted in her lap. "I'm not sure that's appropriate, given that you now know I run a criminal organization?" Kenji's smile was sharp, humorless. "Say it, Emma. You've been dancing around it all night." She forced herself to meet his eyes. "I know what you are. And yet you stayed." He leaned forward, and she caught the scent of expensive cologne mixed with whiskey. "Why?" "I gave you my word I would help." The truth, simple and complete. Emma had been raised by a grandmother who'd taught her that honor mattered, even when it was inconvenient. Something flickered in Kenji's expression. Surprise, perhaps, or respect. Honor from a waitress? How refreshing. He poured whiskey into a second glass, sliding it across to her. "Tell me about Tokyo. The real Tokyo, not the tourist version." Emma stared at the glass, then at him. This was surreal, sharing drinks with a crime lord in an empty restaurant at 2 a.m., discussing a city she'd loved and lost. "Why do you care?" "Because I haven't been home in 6 months." Kenji's voice dropped, revealing a rawness she hadn't expected. "Because you're the first person I've met in this city who understands what I left behind. Humor me." Against her better judgment, Emma took a small sip of whiskey. The burn gave her courage. "I miss the way the rain sounds on temple roofs in Kyoto. The smell of yakitori stands in Shibuya at midnight. The quiet pride in the old woman who taught me tea ceremony, even though I was just a clumsy American girl trying to understand something sacred." Kenji's expression softened imperceptibly. "You worked at a ryokan in Kyoto. Which one?" "Yoshimura-te, near Kiyomizu-dera Temple." Emma felt the familiar ache of longing. "I was terrible at first. Couldn't fold the futons right. Kept mixing up the meal courses. But Yoshimura-san was patient. She said I had the spirit of someone who'd lived in Japan before." "Why did you come back to America?" Kenji asked, and Emma realized he'd shifted closer without her noticing. The intensity in his gaze made her feel exposed, seen in a way that was both frightening and intoxicating. Emma's fingers tightened around the glass. "My grandmother got sick. She raised me after my parents died. I couldn't leave her alone. She'd never said it aloud before, how returning to New York had felt like exile, how she'd traded her dreams for duty and had no regrets, because that's what love required. So you understand sacrifice." Kenji's voice was soft, almost gentle. "Giving up what you want for family." "Yes." Emma looked up, surprised by the vulnerability in his words. "Is that why you're here? In New York instead of Tokyo?" His jaw tightened. "My father built the Yamamoto family into something powerful. When he died 2 years ago, the organization was fractured. Some believed I was too young, too American educated to lead. I had to prove them wrong." He drained his whiskey. "So I handle our international operations, prove my value, earn respect. But respect in my world comes at a price." "What price?" Emma whispered. Kenji's hand moved across the table, his fingers stopping just short of touching hers. "Everything normal. Everything soft. Everything you represent, standing there in your red apron, speaking my language like a gift I don't deserve." The words hung between them, charged with meaning Emma didn't dare analyze. Her heart hammered against her ribs as Kenji's dark eyes held hers. searching for something, absolution perhaps, or permission to be human for just a moment. "You should be afraid of me," he said quietly. "Everyone else is." "I am afraid," Emma admitted, "but not of you. Of this, whatever this is." Smart girl. Kenji's hand finally bridged the distance, his fingers brushing against hers with devastating gentleness. The touch sent electricity through her entire body. "You should leave now. Walk away. Forget tonight happened." Emma knew he was right. Every rational cell in her brain screamed for her to stand up, thank him politely, and disappear from his life forever. But something in his eyes, a desperate loneliness she recognized because she carried the same weight, kept her frozen in place. "I can't." The confession escaped before she could stop it. Kenji's fingers closed around hers, his grip firm but careful, like he was afraid she might shatter. "I destroy everything I touch, Emma. My world is darkness and violence and deals made in blood. You deserve sunlight and safety, and a normal life with a normal man." "Maybe I don't want normal." Emma's voice shook with the truth of it. "Maybe I'm tired of playing it safe, of working a job I hate in a city that feels foreign, of pretending I don't miss the part of me I left in Japan. I'm not your Tokyo fantasy." Kenji's thumb traced circles on her palm, the gesture intimate and addictive. "I'm real, and I'm dangerous." "I know." Emma squeezed his hand, holding his gaze. "Tell me to leave, and I will. Mean it, and I'll walk out that door right now." The silence stretched between them, heavy with possibility and peril. Kenji's expression warred with itself, desire fighting duty, want battling wisdom. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion barely controlled. "I can't! God help us both, I can't!" The confession shattered something between them. Kenji stood, pulling Emma to her feet with a gentleness that contradicted the intensity in his eyes. They stood inches apart, his free hand rising to cup her face with devastating tenderness. "This is a mistake," he whispered in Japanese. "Probably," Emma agreed, her pulse racing. "You'll get hurt. I know. I have enemies who would use you against me. I understand. Then you're either very brave or very foolish." Kenji's thumb traced her cheekbone, his eyes mapping every feature of her face like he was memorizing her. "I suspect both. What are you going to do about it?" Emma's question came out breathless, challenging. Kenji's smile was slow, dangerous, and devastatingly attractive. "Something I'll probably regret." He pulled her closer until their bodies nearly touched, until she could feel the heat radiating from him, until the world narrowed to just this moment. This man. This choice. "Tell me you want this." "Say it in Japanese." "Anata ga hoshi." "I want you." Emma's voice was steady despite her racing heart, the words feeling more true than anything she'd ever spoken. Kenji's control snapped. He kissed her with a hunger that stole her breath, his hands tangling in her hair, pulling her against him with a desperation that matched her own. Emma melted into him, her fingers clutching his blazer, everything she'd been suppressing for months. The loneliness, the longing, the need to feel alive, pouring into that kiss. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Kenji rested his forehead against hers. "This changes everything." "I know," Emma whispered. "My world will come for you now. Just by knowing me, you're in danger." "I know," she repeated, and she did. But standing in the circle of his arms, feeling truly seen for the first time since returning to America, Emma couldn't bring herself to care about the consequences. Kenji pulled back slightly, his expression torn between desire and responsibility. "I should protect you by staying away. But you won't." Emma saw the truth in his eyes before he spoke it. No. His smile was equal parts rueful and possessive. "I'm too selfish for that, but I'll protect you any other way I can. My men will watch over you. You'll be safe. I don't need—" "This isn't negotiable." Kenji's voice took on the commanding tone she'd heard him use with his subordinates. "If you're going to be in my life, Even peripherally, you follow my rules regarding safety. Understood? Emma bristled at the order but saw the genuine concern beneath it. Fine. But I have conditions too. His eyebrow rose. You're making demands of a Yakuza boss. I'm making agreements with a man I'm choosing to trust. Emma straightened her shoulders. I won't be kept in the dark about dangers I'm facing. I won't be treated like property. And you'll respect that I have a life and responsibilities outside of whatever this is between us. Kenji studied her for a long moment, then laughed. A genuine sound of surprised delight. You're either going to save me or destroy me, Emma Clark. Maybe both, she said softly. He kissed her again, slower this time, savoring rather than consuming. When he finally released her, his expression was serious. My driver will take you home. Tomorrow, I'll have someone contact you about additional security measures. Kenji, please. The word, rare from him, she suspected, stopped her protest. Let me do this. I've put you at risk just by wanting you. Let me try to mitigate the damage. Emma nodded, understanding that this was how he showed care, through protection, through control, through ensuring those he valued remained safe from his dangerous world. It should have bothered her more than it did. As Kenji's driver pulled up outside, Emma turned back to find him watching from the doorway, his expression unreadable in the shadows. Kenji? What happens now? His smile was small, almost sad. Now you discover whether the man is worth the danger, and I discover whether I'm capable of being the man you deserve. Emma left without another word, her lips still burning from his kiss, her heart racing with equal parts fear and exhilaration. She'd stepped across a line tonight, into a world of shadows and secrets, and a man whose darkness called to something in her soul she hadn't known existed. Behind her, Kenji Yamamoto watched her disappear into the night, already knowing that letting her leave was both the kindest and cruelest thing he could do. Because she would come back. He could see it in the way she'd looked at him, the way she'd kissed him back with a hunger that matched his own. And when she did, there would be no turning back for either of them. 3 days passed before Emma saw Kenji again. 3 days during which she discovered that protection from a Yakuza boss came with certain uncomfortable realities. The black SUV that appeared outside her apartment every morning. The man in a suit who sat 3 tables away during her shifts at Sakura Prime, his eyes constantly scanning for threats. The phone call from her landlord explaining that her rent had been mysteriously paid for the next 6 months. Emma should have been angry. She tried to be angry. But mostly she felt confused by how safety could feel so much like captivity, and how captivity could feel so much like being cared for in a way she'd never experienced before. On the 4th day, Kenji appeared at the restaurant during her afternoon shift, settling into the same private room where everything had changed. He was dressed immaculately, black blazer, white shirt, that gold chain just visible at his throat. But she could see the tension in his shoulders, the shadows under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and weighty decisions. Emma. His voice was formal, careful. Could you bring tea, please? She prepared the tea with shaking hands, hyper-aware of the curious stares from her coworkers. The restaurant manager had been treating her with newfound respect since that night. Apparently, anyone who could work with Yamamoto-sama was someone to be cautious around. Emma wasn't sure if that was better or worse than being invisible. When she entered the private room, Kenji was alone. No guards, no associates, just him, looking at her with an intensity that made her knees weak. Close the door, he said in Japanese. Please. Emma did, setting the tea tray down with careful precision. You've been having me followed. Protected. Kenji poured the tea himself, a gesture of equality she noticed. There's a difference. Is there? Emma sat without being asked, a small rebellion. Because it feels like I can't make a move without one of your men reporting back to you. Good. Kenji's eyes met hers, unapologetic. That means they're doing their job. I'm not a job, Kenji. I'm a person, with a life that existed before you walked into it. A life that's now at risk because I was selfish enough to kiss you. His voice was sharp with self-recrimination. Do you know what happened yesterday? The Kojima family sent scouts to Manhattan. They're looking for weaknesses, for leverage. If they discover you, then you'll handle it, Emma interrupted, surprised by her own confidence. Isn't that what powerful men like you do? Kenji's jaw tightened. You have no idea what I've done to maintain power, what I'm capable of doing. Then tell me. Emma leaned forward, refusing to let him use his reputation as a shield. Stop hiding behind vague threats and actually talk to me. If I'm going to be in danger because of you, I deserve to know who you really are. The silence stretched between them, heavy with challenge. Finally, Kenji set down his teacup with deliberate care. I was 19 when I killed my first man. His voice was flat, emotionless. He was a rival family member who'd murdered one of ours. My father brought me to the warehouse where they'd captured him, handed me a gun, told me it was time to prove I was worthy of the Yamamoto name. Kenji's eyes grew distant, seeing something Emma couldn't. I was so scared I almost vomited. But I pulled the trigger because that's what sons do in my world. They become what their fathers need them to be. Emma's hands clenched in her lap, processing this confession. How many others? Does it matter? Kenji's smile was bitter. 3, 17, 32. At some point, you stop counting. You stop feeling. You become the reputation because it's easier than remaining human. I don't believe that. Emma's voice was quiet but firm. If you'd truly stopped feeling, you wouldn't have kissed me. You wouldn't have gone to such lengths to keep me safe. You wouldn't look at me like... She stopped, afraid to finish the thought. Like what? Kenji demanded, suddenly standing and moving around the table until he was directly in front of her. Like you're the only real thing in my plastic world? Like you're a dream I'm terrified to wake from? Like wanting you is the first selfish thing I've done for myself in years, and I'm drowning in guilt because I know I'll only drag you down with me? Emma stood too, closing the distance until they were inches apart. Yes, exactly like that. Kenji's hand rose to cup her face, his touch achingly gentle despite the violence he'd confessed to. You should run, Emma, as far and fast as you can. Why? She challenged, her heart racing. Because you're dangerous? Because loving you would be stupid? I already know that. Tell me something I don't know. I can't promise you a normal life. Kenji's thumb traced her lower lip, his eyes tracking the movement with hunger barely contained. I can't promise you safety or peace or anything remotely resembling the future you deserve. All I can promise is that while you're mine, I'll burn the world down to keep you protected. And when you inevitably realize the cost of being with me is too high, I'll let you go, even if it kills me. What if I don't want to go? Emma whispered. What if I'm tired of playing it safe? What if I want to feel alive even if it's dangerous? Then you're crazy. But Kenji was smiling, really smiling, and Emma saw past the crime lord to the man underneath, lonely, burdened, desperately wanting something pure in his dark world. Maybe. Emma's hand slid up his chest, feeling his heartbeat racing beneath her palms. Or maybe I finally found something worth being crazy for. Kenji kissed her with devastating thoroughness, his hands tangling in her hair, pulling her against him like she was oxygen and he was drowning. Emma surrendered to it, to him, to this impossible thing between them that felt both like salvation and damnation. When they finally broke apart, Kenji rested his forehead against hers, breathing hard. I want you, Emma. Not just physically, though God knows I want that too. I want your laugh and your stubborn pride and the way you speak Japanese like it's poetry. I want the version of myself I see reflected in your eyes. Someone who might be capable of being more than his worst actions. Then take me, Emma said simply. I'm offering. Despite the danger, despite everything I know I should do instead. I'm choosing you. You'll regret it. But Kenji's arms tightened around her, contradicting his words. Probably. Emma smiled against his chest. Regret me too? Never. The word was fierce, possessive, absolute. You're mine now, Emma Clark, and I protect what's mine. Caveman. But she was laughing, feeling lighter than she had in years. Kenji pulled back just enough to look at her seriously. There are rules. For your safety. Of course there are, Emma sighed. You don't go anywhere alone after dark. You check in daily. If anything feels wrong, anything at all, you call me immediately. His expression was intense, worried. My world doesn't forgive mistakes, Emma. One wrong move could... She stopped him with a kiss, pouring all her assurance into it. When she pulled back, her voice was steady. I understand. I'm not naive about what I'm walking into, but I'm also not helpless. I survived 2 years in a foreign country, working multiple jobs, learning a language that doesn't even share our alphabet. Give me some credit. I do. Kenji's smile was soft, admiring. More than you know. You're stronger than half my men. Damn right I am. Emma straightened his collar, a gesture of intimacy that felt natural despite how new this was. Now, are we done being dramatic about how dangerous this is? Because I have about 15 minutes left on my break, and I'd rather spend it kissing you than arguing. Kenji laughed. That same genuine sound from before, that transformed his face from intimidating to breathtakingly attractive. Demanding woman. You like it? Emma pulled him down for another kiss, this one playful, testing. I really do, he murmured against her lips. They spent the rest of Emma's break wrapped around each other, stealing kisses between quiet conversations about inconsequential things, favorite foods, embarrassing memories, dreams they'd abandoned or were afraid to voice. For those precious minutes, they weren't a Yakuza boss and a waitress caught in an impossible situation. They were just a man and woman discovering each other, learning the way their pieces fit together despite every logical reason they shouldn't. When Emma finally had to return to work, Kenji held her hand a moment longer. Dinner. Tomorrow night. Let me take you somewhere. Somewhere public? Emma raised an eyebrow. Is that safe? Probably not. Kenji's smile was wicked. But I want to do this properly. Court you like you deserve, even if it's complicated by the fact that I'm who I am. You're going to spoil me, Emma warned, but her heart was singing. That's the plan. Kenji kissed her knuckles, a formal gesture that somehow felt more intimate than any of their passionate kisses. Tomorrow, 7 p.m., wear something nice. As Emma left the private room, floating on a cloud of possibility and danger, she noticed Tanaka waiting in the hallway. His scarred face was expressionless, but his eyes, dark and knowing, tracked her movement with what might have been concern. He's different with you, Tanaka said quietly in Japanese, stopping her. More human. I'm not sure if that's good or dangerous. Emma met his gaze steadily. Maybe it's both. Maybe. Tanaka's expression didn't change. Just know that when his enemies figure out what you mean to him, they'll come for you. Not to kill you. That would be too merciful. They'll use you to break him, to destroy everything he's built. Then we'll deal with it together, Emma said with more confidence than she felt. Tanaka studied her for a long moment, then bowed slightly, a gesture of unexpected respect. You might actually be worthy of him, Emma-san. I hope you survive long enough to prove it. The words should have terrified her. Instead, as Emma returned to her tables and her normal life that suddenly felt anything but normal, she felt a strange sense of certainty. Whatever came next, danger, passion, possible heartbreak, she was choosing it with open eyes. Kenji Yamamoto had crashed into her carefully constructed existence and shattered every plan she'd made for her safe, predictable future. And despite every rational reason she should regret it, Emma found herself grateful. Because for the first time since returning from Tokyo, she felt truly, terrifyingly, wonderfully alive. And whatever price that aliveness demanded, she would pay it willingly. The explosion happened on a Thursday. Emma was walking home from her shift at Sakura Prime, her mind pleasantly occupied with thoughts of Kenji, their dinner date the night before, the way he'd looked at her across the candlelit table, like she was something precious and terrifying all at once. She was so lost in the memory of his kiss goodbye that she almost didn't notice the black sedan pulling up too fast beside her. Almost. Training from 2 weeks of Kenji's protection protocols kicked in. Emma spun toward the crowded street, her hand already reaching for her phone, but rough hands grabbed her from behind. A cloth pressed against her mouth, chemical sweet, sickly, and the world tilted sideways. Her last conscious thought was of Kenji's face, and the promise she'd made to call if anything felt wrong. She woke to darkness and the smell of damp concrete. Emma's head throbbed. Her wrists burned where rough rope bound them behind her back. As her vision adjusted, she made out the interior of what looked like an abandoned warehouse. Broken windows casting weak light, rust and decay everywhere. The kind of place where bad things happened and no one heard you scream. She's awake. The voice was male, accented, Japanese, but not Kenji's smooth Tokyo dialect. This was rougher, street-hardened. "Tell Kojima-san the American girl is ready." Emma's blood ran cold. Kojima, the rival family Kenji had mentioned. The ones looking for weakness, for leverage. They'd found it. A man stepped into her line of sight. Middle-aged, scar running down his left cheek, expensive suit that couldn't hide the violence in his eyes. Emma Clark, the waitress who speaks Japanese. How convenient. He crouched in front of her, smiling without warmth. "You cost my organization a very profitable deal, you know. When Yamamoto brought you in to translate, he shut us out. That was unwise." "Kenji doesn't know I'm here," Emma said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "I'm nobody to him. Just a translator he hired." "Please." Kojima's laugh was cruel. "We've had eyes on you for a week. We've seen how he looks at you. How he visits that restaurant every day just to see you serve tea. How his second-in-command personally oversees your protection detail." He grabbed her chin roughly. "You're not nobody, Emma-san. You're his first mistake in years." Emma jerked away from his touch, her mind racing. Kenji would come. He had to come. But what would it cost him? How many of his men would get hurt trying to save her? What position would this put him in with his own organization? "He won't negotiate with you," Emma said, more confident than she felt. "Kenji doesn't show weakness." "Oh, I'm counting on that." Kojima stood, pulling out his phone. "I'm not asking for negotiation. I'm declaring war. And you, my dear, are the first casualty." The next hour was the longest of Emma's life. She sat in that cold warehouse, listening to Kojima make calls, arranging meetings, positioning his people, preparing for confrontation. She caught fragments in Japanese about territory, about respect, about how the Yamamoto family's time in New York was ending. And then, like a storm breaking, everything changed. It started with the sound of vehicles, multiple engines, the screech of tires. Then voices, shouting in Japanese. The warehouse lights suddenly blazed to life, and Emma saw at least a dozen of Kojima's men scrambling to defensive positions. "Yamamoto's here," someone yelled. "He brought his entire family." Kojima's expression twisted with satisfaction. "Good, let him watch." But before he could move toward Emma, Tanaka's voice cut through the chaos. "Kojima! You want war? Face Yamamoto-san like a man, not hiding behind a woman." The next few minutes blurred together. Emma heard shouting, confrontation, felt the building tension of men on the edge of violence, but no gunfire, no screams. Just the sound of negotiation conducted with barely contained fury, threats delivered in cold Japanese that promised consequences without specifying methods. And then Kenji was there. He appeared in her line of sight like an avenging angel, his face a mask of controlled rage that terrified her, even though she knew it wasn't directed at her. His blazer was gone, his white shirt rolled up to his forearms, revealing more of the intricate tattoos that marked his body. He looked dangerous, powerful, every inch the Yakuza boss his reputation claimed. But when his eyes found hers, something cracked in that controlled exterior. Emma. Her name was a prayer and a curse. Kenji was beside her in 3 strides, his hands working at her bonds with shaking fingers. "Are you hurt? Did they—" "I'm okay," Emma whispered, though she was trembling. "Kenji, I'm sorry. I should have been more careful. Don't." He pulled her into his arms the moment her hands were free, holding her with desperate intensity. "This is my fault. All of it. I should have kept you away from me. The situation is resolved, Yamamoto-san." Tanaka appeared at his shoulder, his expression grim. "Kojima has agreed to withdraw his people. The terms you proposed were acceptable to all parties." Kenji's arms tightened around Emma. "Good. Get her out of here, now." "Kenji." Emma started to protest, but he pulled back, his hands framing her face. "Please, Emma. Let Tanaka take you somewhere safe. I have to finish this." His eyes held hers, pleading and commanding at once. "Trust me." Emma wanted to argue, wanted to stay, but she saw the fear beneath his control. Fear for her, fear of what might still happen if she remained in the middle of this. So she nodded, let Tanaka guide her out of the warehouse and into a waiting car. As they drove away, Emma looked back to see Kenji standing in the warehouse doorway, watching her leave. Even from a distance, she could see the rigid set of his shoulders, the way his hands clenched at his sides. He looked like a man breaking. 3 days passed before Emma saw Kenji again. 3 days of being sequestered in a luxury apartment she'd never seen before, with round-the-clock guards, and no explanation beyond Tanaka's cryptic, "Yamamoto-san is handling family business." 3 days of driving herself crazy with worst-case scenarios. When Kenji finally appeared, he looked exhausted. The shadows under his eyes had deepened, his usual immaculate appearance slightly disheveled, shirt wrinkled, hair less perfectly styled. He dismissed the guards with a gesture, then stood in the doorway like he wasn't sure he had the right to enter. "Hi," Emma said softly, her heart breaking at the distance in his expression. "Hi." Kenji's voice was rough with disuse and emotion. "I'm sorry it took so long. There were complications. Are you okay?" Emma moved toward him, but he stepped back, a subtle rejection that hurt more than she wanted to admit. "I'm fine. Kojima won't be a problem anymore. His family has agreed to certain territorial concessions in exchange for—" He trailed off, his jaw tight. "In exchange for what?" "For me letting him live." Kenji's eyes met hers, and she saw the weight of violence there. Not enacted, but considered, prepared for. "He hurt you, Emma. Scared you, threatened you. Every instinct I have wanted to end him for that. But doing so would have started a war that would put you at even greater risk." Emma's throat tightened. "So you chose me over revenge. I chose you over everything." Kenji's voice broke slightly. "And that's the problem. I can't lead my family and protect you. I can't be what my organization needs and be what you deserve. Today I had to choose between honoring my father's legacy and keeping you safe. And I chose you without hesitation. That makes me weak. Compromised. Or it makes you human," Emma argued, closing the distance between them despite his attempt to maintain space. "Kenji, you're not weak for caring about someone. In my world, I am." His hands rose to cup her face, the gesture achingly familiar. "Emma, I love you. God help me. I fell in love with you the moment you spoke Japanese in that restaurant, and every day since has only made it worse. But loving you is destroying everything I built. My men question my judgment. Rival families sense vulnerability. And you—" His voice roughened with emotion. "You almost died because of me." Emma's heart stuttered at the confession she'd been too afraid to hope for. "I love you too. And I'm not afraid of your world." "You should be." Kenji pulled back, and Emma saw the decision already made in his eyes. "I'm sending you away. Somewhere safe, far from New York. I've arranged everything. A new apartment, a job, protection that will be invisible but constant. You'll be able to live normally, without looking over your shoulder. Without you, you mean." Emma felt tears burning behind her eyes. "You're pushing me away." "I'm keeping you alive. Kenji's expression was resolute despite the pain flickering there. "This is the only way I can protect you, Emma, by removing you from my life entirely. That's not your choice to make." Emma's voice turned fierce. "I'm not some asset you get to relocate for strategic purposes. I'm a woman who loves you, who chose you knowing the risks. You don't get to decide for me that it's too dangerous." "Emma." "No." She grabbed his shirt, forcing him to look at her. "You want to protect me? Then stop hiding behind noble sacrifice and actually talk to me. What do you want, Kenji? Not what's smart or safe or strategic. What do you want?" "You." The word tore out of him. "I want you in my life, in my bed, by my side. I want to wake up to your face every morning. I want to teach you more Japanese and learn why you frown when you concentrate. I want everything normal people get to have, and I know I can't. But God, Emma, I want it anyway." "Then take it." Emma pulled him down until their foreheads touched. "Take me." "I'm here. I'm staying. And if your world has a problem with that, then maybe it's time your world changed." Kenji's control finally shattered. He kissed her with desperate hunger, his hands tangling in her hair, pulling her against him like he could merge them into one person who would never have to face these impossible choices. Emma kissed him back with everything she had, all her fear, all her love, all her stubborn refusal to let him push her away for her own good. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Kenji rested his forehead against hers. "You're going to get us both killed, you know that?" "Maybe." Emma smiled through her tears. "Or maybe we'll figure out how to live instead. Together. Isn't that worth fighting for?" "You're worth fighting the entire world for," Kenji said fiercely. "But Emma, if I keep you, I can't promise you safety. I can't promise you normal. All I can promise is that I'll love you with everything I am, and I'll destroy anyone who tries to hurt you." "That's enough," Emma whispered. "That's everything." Kenji pulled her close again, and they stood there in that borrowed apartment, holding each other like lifelines. Outside, the city continued its rhythm, unaware that in this moment, a Yakuza boss was choosing love over power, and a waitress was choosing danger over safety. And somehow, impossibly, it felt like exactly the right choice for both of them. "I need to tell you something," Kenji said quietly, "about what happened with Kojima. About the choice I made." Emma pulled back to look at him. "Okay. To secure your safety, to ensure he'd never come after you again, I agreed to step back from the Yamamoto family's New York operations." Kenji's voice was steady, but his eyes held uncertainty. "Not completely. I'll still have influence, still technically be Oyabun. But day-to-day control goes to Tanaka. I'm semi-retiring." Emma's breath caught. "Kenji, you can't give up your position because of me." "I'm not giving it up. I'm redefining it." His smile was small but genuine. "My father built an empire. I'm choosing to build a life. There's a difference." "What will you do?" "Figure out who Kenji Yamamoto is when he's not trying to live up to his father's shadow." He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the gesture tender. "Maybe run the family's legitimate businesses. Maybe take that American girl I love to Tokyo so she can show me her favorite temple. Maybe just exist for a while without constantly looking over my shoulder." "You'd really do that?" Emma's voice was hushed with wonder. "Give up power for a chance at normal?" "Emma, I've had power. It's cold and lonely, and it costs everything worth having. But you—" Kenji's thumb traced her cheekbone. "You make me feel human again. That's worth more than any empire." Emma kissed him softly, reverently, trying to pour all her gratitude and love into that single gesture. When she pulled back, her eyes were bright with tears. "I love you. I love you so much it terrifies me." "Good," Kenji murmured against her lips. "Be terrified with me. We'll figure out the rest together." The war, if it could be called that, lasted 6 weeks. Emma experienced it in fragments. Kenji disappearing for days at a time, Tanaka's grim face delivering updates she didn't fully understand, the increased security that felt more like a cage than protection. But through it all, Kenji kept his promise. He called every night, his voice exhausted but steady, telling her about his day in carefully edited terms that she learned to translate into the dangerous reality beneath. The turning point came on a rain-soaked Tuesday in November. Emma was in the secured apartment. She'd long since stopped thinking of it as borrowed, when Kenji appeared without warning. He was soaked through, his white shirt clinging to his body, his face set in lines of exhaustion and something else she couldn't quite read. "It's over," he said simply. Emma's heart leaped. "Over?" "Kenji, what?" Kojima withdrew his challenge. "The other families have accepted the new arrangement. Tanaka running operations while I transition to advisory." Kenji moved further into the room, water dripping onto the expensive hardwood. "I'm free, Emma. Or as free as someone like me can be." "That's amazing." Emma went to him, not caring about the rain soaking into her clothes as she wrapped her arms around him. "You did it." "We did it." Kenji held her tight. "You gave me a reason to want something beyond power, a reason to believe I could be more than my worst actions." They stood there for a long moment, just holding each other, feeling the weight of the past weeks finally lifting. Then Kenji pulled back slightly, his expression turning serious. "I need to know something, Emma. After everything you've seen, everything you've been through because of me, do you still want this? Want me? Are you kidding?" Emma laughed, the sound slightly hysterical with relief. "Kenji, I've been trapped in this apartment for weeks, worrying about you, missing you, and not once did I regret choosing you. Yes, I want this. I want you. Every complicated, dangerous, beautiful part of you." Kenji's expression transformed. Relief and love and desire all mixing into something that made Emma's breath catch. "Then I have something to show you." He led her to the window, where the rain-soaked city spread out below them. "I bought a building in Brooklyn. Renovated loft space, complete privacy, security that doesn't feel like a prison. I want us to make it home. Together. If you'll have me." Emma turned to stare at him. "You bought us a building?" "Well, technically I bought the whole building for security purposes, but the top floor is ours." Kenji's smile was almost shy, an expression she'd never seen on him before. "I know it's fast. I know we've only known each other for 2 months, but Emma, in my world, 2 months of intensity is worth years of normal dating. I know what I want. I want you, permanently, if you'll take a chance on this life with me." "This life being," Emma prompted, needing to hear him say it. "Semi-retired Yakuza boss trying to go legitimate while dealing with occasional complications from his past." Kenji's tone was wry. "Running my family's legal businesses, advising Tanaka when needed, staying connected to my heritage while building something new. It won't be completely normal, Emma. There will still be guards, still be politics, still be moments when my past comes calling. But I swear to you, I'll spend every day trying to be worthy of your faith in me." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "You're already worthy. You always have been. You just couldn't see it beneath the armor you built." "I see it now." Kenji cupped her face with infinite gentleness. "You showed me." They kissed in that rain-streaked window, the city lights blurring through the water, everything feeling simultaneously brand new and inevitable. When they finally broke apart, Emma was smiling. "Show me our home," she said. "Take me to Brooklyn." The loft was everything Kenji had promised. Spacious and light-filled despite the rain, hardwood floors and exposed brick, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bridge. But what caught Emma's breath was the small details. The bookshelf already filled with Japanese literature, the corner set up like a traditional tea room, the photograph on the mantel of a young Kenji with an older man who must have been his father. "You kept this?" Emma touched the frame gently. "He wasn't a good man by most standards," Kenji said quietly, coming to stand beside her. "But he loved me in the only way he knew how. And I hope, he'd understand why I'm choosing differently than he did. Why I'm choosing love over legacy. He'd be proud of you," Emma said with certainty. You're strong enough to change, to grow. That takes more courage than just following the path laid out for you. Kenji pulled her close, his chin resting on top of her head. Move in with me, Emma. Make this space ours. Help me figure out who I'm becoming. Yes. The answer was simple, immediate. Yes to all of it. Over the next few weeks, Emma learned what life with Kenji Yamamoto actually looked like. He was surprisingly domestic, could cook traditional Japanese dishes that made her heart ache with nostalgia, insisted on making the bed with hospital corners, became obsessive about the perfect tea preparation. But there were also the calls at odd hours, the visits from Tanaka bringing business updates, the moments when she'd catch him staring out the window with an expression that spoke of violence considered and rejected. What are you thinking? Emma asked one evening, finding him on their balcony, watching the city lights. That I'm happy. Kenji pulled her into his arms, his warmth cutting through the November chill. Truly, genuinely happy. And I don't know what to do with that. You could try enjoying it, Emma suggested, smiling against his chest. I'm afraid if I relax too much, I'll lose it. His confession was quiet, vulnerable. That the universe will realize it made a mistake, giving someone like me something as precious as you. Emma pulled back to look at him seriously. Kenji, you've spent your whole life believing you don't deserve good things. That happiness is for other people. But you know what? You're wrong. You deserve every bit of joy you can find. And I'm going to spend however long it takes convincing you of that. However long, huh? Kenji's expression turned playful, though his eyes remained serious. Is that a promise, Emma Clark? It's a promise. Emma rose on her toes to kiss him softly. I'm not going anywhere. Good. Kenji reached into his pocket, his expression shifting to something nervous, an emotion she rarely saw from him. Because I have something I need to ask you. Emma's breath caught as he pulled out a small black box. I know it's fast, Kenji said, opening the box to reveal an elegant ring, a single diamond set in platinum with delicate cherry blossom engravings along the band. I know most people wait longer, plan some elaborate proposal. But Emma, I've wasted too much of my life doing what I'm supposed to instead of what I want. And I want you. Permanently. Legally, in every way that matters. So, he took a breath, his usual confidence wavering. Emma Clark, will you marry me? Emma's hand flew to her mouth, tears already streaming down her face. Kenji, before you answer, you should know what you're agreeing to, Kenji continued quickly. Marriage to me means occasional security concerns. It means my past potentially affecting our future. It means children, if we have them, growing up knowing their father's history. It means, yes. Emma cut off his worried litany. Yes, I'll marry you. Despite all of that, because of all of that, yes. Kenji's expression transformed, disbelief giving way to joy so pure it made Emma's heart hurt. He slid the ring onto her finger with shaking hands, then pulled her into a kiss that felt like a promise, a prayer, and a celebration, all at once. When they finally broke apart, both laughing and crying, Kenji pressed his forehead to hers. I don't deserve you. Probably not, Emma agreed, smiling. Lucky for you, I'm not going anywhere. Lucky for me, Kenji echoed, his voice thick with emotion. The luckiest man alive. They stood on that balcony as the city glittered below them, two people from impossibly different worlds who'd somehow found each other in the chaos. And for the first time in his life, Kenji Yamamoto believed in something beyond power and respect and duty. He believed in love, in second chances, in the possibility of redemption through the eyes of a woman who saw past his reputation to the man underneath. It wasn't the life he'd planned, but as Emma's arms wrapped around him and her ring caught the light, Kenji realized it was the life he'd been searching for all along. He'd just been too blind to see it until a brave American waitress had walked into his world and changed everything. The war was over, the empire was transformed, and Kenji Yamamoto, former Yakuza boss, current legitimate businessman, future husband, had finally found something worth living for beyond the shadow of his past. He'd found home. The wedding took place on a crisp January morning at a small Shinto shrine in upstate New York, one of the few in America that agreed to perform the ceremony once Tanaka had made certain arrangements. Emma stood in a traditional white shiromuku, the elaborate kimono feeling both foreign and right, while Kenji looked devastatingly handsome in his black Monsuki Haori hakama. His family crest, a stylized mountain and cherry blossom, was embroidered on the back in silver thread, a reminder of the legacy he carried even as he forged a new path. "You're stunning," Kenji whispered in Japanese as they prepared for the ceremony. His hand found hers, squeezing gently. "Like you stepped out of a dream." "You're not so bad yourself," Emma replied, her heart full to bursting. "Very handsome Yakuza-turned-legitimate businessman." "Former Yakuza?" Kenji corrected with a smile. Emphasis on former. The ceremony was small, just Tanaka and a few of Kenji's most trusted men, plus Emma's cousin Sarah who'd flown in from California. No elaborate reception, no hundreds of guests, just the sacred simplicity of two people committing their lives to each other beneath the watchful gaze of ancient spirits. As they exchanged sake cups in the Sansan Kudo ritual, Emma felt the weight of tradition wrapping around them, connecting them not just to each other, but to centuries of people who'd made the same promises, taken the same vows. When Kenji's lips touched the rim of the cup she'd just sipped from, his eyes held hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Mine," he mouthed silently. "Yours," she mouthed back. The reception, such as it was, took place at their Brooklyn loft. Tanaka had arranged for catering, traditional Japanese dishes mixed with American comfort food, a perfect blend of their two worlds. As the small group celebrated, Emma found herself watching Kenji interact with his men, seeing how they'd adapted to his new role. There was still respect, still loyalty, but something had shifted. They no longer looked at him as a weapon to be wielded, but as a leader who'd chosen a different kind of strength. "You did this," Tanaka said quietly, appearing at Emma's elbow. "Changed him for the better." Emma turned to face the scarred man who'd once warned her about the dangers of loving Kenji. "We changed each other." "That's how it works when it's real." "Perhaps." Tanaka's expression softened slightly. "He's happy. I've known Yamamoto-san since he was 19, and I've never seen him happy until you. That's worth more than any territory or respect he gave up." "He didn't give it up," Emma corrected gently. "He transformed it into something better." "There's a difference." Tanaka studied her for a moment, then bowed, deep and genuine. "You honor our family, Emma-san. May you bring Yamamoto-san many years of joy." As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Emma found Kenji on the balcony where he'd proposed months earlier. He'd removed his formal haori, his white kimono shirt partially unbuttoned, the gold chain she'd first noticed at the restaurant glinting against his skin. He looked relaxed, content, so different from the controlled, dangerous man she'd met in Sakura Prime. "Hi, husband," Emma said, testing out the word. Kenji's smile was slow and intimate. "Hi, wife. Come here." Emma moved into his arms, fitting against him like she was designed for that exact space. "Good party?" "Perfect party." Kenji's hands traced gentle patterns on her back. "Small, meaningful, surrounded by people who actually matter. Everything I never knew I wanted." "Any regrets?" Emma asked, though she thought she already knew the answer. "Not a single one." Kenji tilted her chin up, his expression serious despite the happiness radiating from him. "Emma, I meant every word of my vows. You're my future now, my priority. Whatever comes, we face it together." "Together," Emma agreed, sealing the promise with a kiss. They stood there as the city sparkled below them, exactly where they'd been when Kenji had proposed. But everything had changed. They were married now, legally and spiritually bound, partners in building a life that honored both their pasts while reaching toward something new. Over the following months, Emma discovered what happily ever after looked like for a reformed crime lord and his American wife. Kenji threw himself into legitimate business with the same intensity he'd once applied to underground operations. He took over management of the Yamamoto family's import, export companies, real estate holdings, and investment portfolios. All legal, all above board, all surprisingly fulfilling. Who knew paperwork could be exciting? Kenji joked one evening, reviewing contracts at their dining table while Emma prepared dinner. But she saw the truth. He loved the challenge of building something clean, something he could be proud of without reservation. Emma, meanwhile, had quit her job at Sakura Prime and enrolled in graduate school, pursuing a degree in Japanese cultural studies. Her dream of working in translation and cultural exchange, the one she'd abandoned when returning to care for her grandmother, had been reignited by Kenji's encouragement and financial support. "You gave up your dreams once for family," he'd said when presenting her with the acceptance letter he'd helped her prepare. "I won't let you give them up again. Chase them, Emma. I'll be right here supporting you." They settled into a rhythm, domestic and peaceful, with just enough edge to keep things interesting. There were still occasional visits from Tanaka bringing updates on family business. Still moments when Kenji would tense at unexpected sounds, old instincts dying hard. Still nights when Emma would wake to find him staring at the ceiling, processing memories she could only imagine. But there were also lazy Sunday mornings tangled in their sheets, Kenji teaching her Japanese calligraphy at the kitchen table, trips back to Japan where Emma showed him her favorite spots while he introduced her to his extended family. There were dinner parties with their strange mix of friends, grad students and reformed yakuza, her cousin and his former associates, everyone blending in ways that shouldn't work, but somehow did. On their first anniversary, Kenji took Emma back to Sakura Prime, now under new ownership but still serving exceptional Japanese cuisine. They sat in the same private room where everything had started, where a frustrated crime lord had met a brave waitress who spoke his language. "1 year ago, I was furious about a language barrier," Kenji said, raising his sake cup. "I never imagined that frustration would lead to this. To you. To us." "Best translation job I ever took," Emma replied, clinking her cup against his. "Even if the client was terrifying." "Was?" Kenji raised an eyebrow, playful. "Past tense?" "Fine. Is occasionally terrifying when he gets that look in his eyes that says he's imagining creative violence against people who cut me off in traffic." Emma smiled. "But mostly he's just the man I love." "The man who loves you more than anything else in this world," Kenji corrected. "More than power, more than respect, more than any empire. You're my empire now, Emma Yamamoto." Hearing her married name still sent a thrill through her. "Emma Yamamoto. I'm still getting used to it." "Take your time." Kenji reached across the table, threading their fingers together. "We have forever." 2 years after their wedding, Emma graduated with her master's degree. Kenji sat in the audience with Tanaka and Sarah, cheering loudly when Emma's name was called, so loudly that several people turned to stare. But Emma only saw him, her husband, looking at her with such pride and love that she felt tears prick her eyes. Later, at the celebration dinner, Kenji pulled her aside. "I have something for you, a graduation present." He handed her an envelope. Inside was a job offer, cultural consultant position at a prestigious museum, specializing in Japanese-American cultural exchange. The salary was generous. The responsibilities aligned perfectly with her skills and interests. "Kenji, this is perfect." Emma looked up at him, awed. "How did you—" "I may have mentioned to the museum director that I knew someone exceptional," Kenji admitted. "Someone who understood both cultures deeply, who could bridge them with grace and intelligence. The rest was your own merit. Your portfolio, your education, your experience. That's all you, Emma." Emma threw her arms around him, overwhelmed with gratitude and love. "Thank you. For believing in me. For supporting my dreams. Always." Kenji murmured into her hair. "Your dreams are my dreams now." 3 years into their marriage, on a quiet Tuesday evening, Emma found Kenji in their converted tea room, staring at an old photograph. She recognized it. the picture of him with his father that had been in their loft since the beginning. Thinking about him? Emma asked softly, settling beside him, wondering what he'd think of all this. Kenji gestured vaguely at their life, the peace, the legitimacy, the choice of love over power. Whether he'd be disappointed or proud. I think he'd be both, Emma said honestly. Disappointed that you didn't follow his exact path, but proud that you were strong enough to forge your own. That takes real courage, Kenji. The kind your father would have respected. Kenji was quiet for a long moment. I used to think strength meant never showing weakness. Never admitting love or fear or doubt. But you taught me that real strength is being vulnerable enough to change. To choose a different kind of power, the power to build rather than destroy. We built something good, Emma agreed, leaning against his shoulder. Something worth protecting. Speaking of building, Kenji's tone shifted, becoming both nervous and excited. How would you feel about expanding our family? Emma's heart skipped. Kenji, are you saying? I'm saying I want children with you, if you want them too. He turned to face her fully, his expression open and hopeful in a way that still surprised her sometimes. I want to be the father mine never was. To raise kids who know they're loved unconditionally, who understand that strength comes in many forms, who grow up seeing their mother achieve her dreams and their father support her every step of the way. Yes. Emma's answer was immediate, certain. Yes to all of it. Let's build that future together. Kenji pulled her close, and they sat there in the fading light. Two people who'd found each other against impossible odds and built a life that honored both their pasts while reaching toward something better. The Yakuza boss who'd chosen love over empire, and the waitress who'd seen past his reputation to the man underneath. They'd proven that transformation was possible, that love could bridge any divide, that sometimes the bravest thing was not holding on to power, but letting it go. 5 years after that first meeting in Sakura Prime, Emma and Kenji stood in their Brooklyn loft, now filled with the chaos of twin toddlers, a boy and a girl with Kenji's dark hair and Emma's blue eyes. The children spoke both English and Japanese fluently, their laughter filling spaces that had once held only silence and shadow. Kenji had fully transitioned into his new role, respected in legitimate business circles, occasionally consulted by his family but no longer running operations. He'd published a book about transitioning from illegal enterprises to legitimate business, carefully edited to protect identities, that had become surprisingly popular. Emma had been promoted to head of her museum department, her expertise sought after by institutions worldwide. They'd built something impossible, a normal life, a happy family, a future unmarred by the violence and darkness of Kenji's past. There were still bodyguards, still precautions, still moments when his history surfaced. But they faced it together, partners in every sense. Remember when you told me I'd regret choosing you? Emma asked one evening, watching Kenji play with their children on the floor. Kenji looked up, his expression soft with contentment. I do. I was wrong. Spectacularly wrong, Emma agreed, laughing. This is the best decision I ever made. Second best, Kenji corrected, standing and pulling her close. The first was speaking Japanese to a furious Yakuza boss and not running away when you realized what he was. True. Emma kissed him softly. Though in fairness, you were very attractive when you were intimidating. Was? Kenji's eyes sparked with playful challenge. Past tense again? Still are, Emma amended. But now you're also an amazing father, successful businessman, and the man who makes me coffee every morning exactly how I like it. I contain multitudes, Kenji quoted, grinning. They stood there in their home, surrounded by the life they'd built from impossible beginnings. Proof that people could change, that love could conquer even the darkest pasts, that choosing vulnerability over armor was the bravest act of all. Kenji Yamamoto had been many things: Yakuza boss, crime lord, feared oyabun. But the title he wore with most pride was the simplest. Husband, father, Man who'd found redemption in the eyes of a brave woman who'd offered him something more precious than any empire. A chance to be human. And Emma Yamamoto, the waitress who'd spoken Japanese to a dangerous man and seen past his reputation to his heart, had gained something equally precious. A love that had transformed them both. A partnership that proved strength came in many forms. And a family that honored both their cultures while creating something entirely new. Their story wasn't typical, but then again, neither were they. And that was perfectly, wonderfully, exactly right.